Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Warfield. I'm a saxophonist, composer, and I'm also a professor at Temple University. I'm part of their Jazz Studies program under the direction of Terrell Stafford. And today I'm going to talk with you about one of the most important components of playing any instrument, but absolutely for the saxophone, since it's closest to the human voice, and that is sound. I think one of the first things we need to understand about the instrument is that it's the closest instrument to the human voice. And so the parameters for expression potentially are very wide. And we want to try to come up with an idea that allows us to have the widest parameter of expression as possible. So let's just talk a bit about how to do this. The best way for us to think about this, in my opinion, is to reference. So the first thing I would suggest to you is to maybe go on YouTube. I like to use YouTube. That's usually where I go when I'm researching. Go on YouTube and find yourself some saxophonists. I would strongly suggest that you go as deep into the tradition as possible when researching saxophonists, because you're almost guaranteed to get more depth in sound, if for no other reason than the nature of the instruments. So some suggestions I would like to give to you for horn players to listen to would be tenor saxophonists like Chu Berry or Ben Webster or Lester Young, of course the great Sonny Rollins, and the great John Coltrane, who is a big hero of all of ours. As well, on alto, I can't not talk about Benny Carter. He's the granddaddy, in my opinion, of the alto saxophone, as well as Johnny Hodges, and of course, Charlie Parker. And then later on, we have a lot of other saxophonists, I think, that somehow have been influenced by these individuals who have had a long-standing career in recording and influencing us all. But you want to listen to these saxophonists and ask yourself, what do I like about their sound? So that you can start working on developing your own character. What I like to call it is sonic DNA. One of the goals in jazz music is to develop your own sound. That's like number one, to develop a singular and individual voice. Now, the important thing to understand about that is it is more attainable than what you would think. It seems like a daunting task, but you have to understand, technically, we already have our own individual voice. So the object of the game is to tap into that, as well as listen and mimic a lot of musicians that we consider our heroes or people that we just like and we'd like to try to sound like, so that you can have, again, an individual voice and an opportunity, a wider opportunity for expression. So once you kind of pick a few people that you like, maybe you want to take one of those individuals specifically and just spend time with them first, trying to emulate their sound. And then from there, go to the next person, and then the next person, and the next person. And before it's all over, you'll find that you're starting to develop something as the result of taking all of these ideas from the different saxophonists and putting it in a funnel, right? It's like putting it in a funnel, it's going in, and then out comes your individuality that way. So that's really important to understand. So let's talk about the mechanics of the instrument itself. We have a mouthpiece, ligature, and reed. We actually start there, and it is in conjunction, it is this idea in conjunction with its compatibility to your saxophone. And I'm going to tell you a couple of things that'll make you think differently about how to buy a saxophone or even how to just practice your saxophone by embracing all of the ideas that sound has to offer. But it's the compatibility between the reed, the ligature, and the mouthpiece. So I'm going to take this off. So we know that the reed is a thin strip of wood that vibrates. One of the things that I want to tell you, because I don't want you to be misconstrued, is that having a larger number reed gives you a big sound. That's not true. It's really about vibration, and generally speaking, having a thinner reed is going to give you a more resonant sound. Having a more stiff reed can give you a more resonant sound, but it's going to be dependent upon what your mouthpiece is like. So what you want to think about is balance. So common sense will tell you, if you have a thick reed, then you probably want to play on a smaller opening mouthpiece. If you have a smaller reed, like maybe a 2.5, then you can play on a larger bored mouthpiece. The bore is the opening inside of the mouthpiece. So, because the idea is balance. Because what you don't want is one of my teachers when I was younger told me, he said, you don't want a thick piece of tree bark attached to a pipe and you're trying to blow this and trying to get sound out of it. Why? Because it stops your instrument from being free blowing. And the moment you have to concentrate on blowing, you can no longer concentrate on ideas. You are now distracted. So you want this to be as easy as possible. So generally speaking, again, thin reed, lots of vibration. Thicker reed, less vibration, but more core in your sound. We'll get to core in just a second. Larger bore, you're going to have to put more air in it. Smaller bore, which is a smaller opening or aperture, you'll put less air in. This works in conjunction with your ligature, which is what attaches to this reed. All right, now, I was one of those people that in my younger years that used to think ligatures weren't important, but ligatures are very important, and here's why. They're made of a material, or they're designed to hold the reed in place so that it can vibrate properly. And whatever material you have is going to dictate how it vibrates. So if you have anything of a softer material, like leather, you're going to get a vibration, but the sound is probably going to be a darker sound. If you have more metal like I have here, I have thicker metal, and it's thin and flat, you're going to get a better vibration. If you, or I won't say better, but even more vibration. And if you have a ligature that is of even more dense material, but it's maybe constructed to where everything that it's made of and how it's designed is more thin so that there's more space, you're probably going to get even more vibration. But all of those things then dictate how you can balance that vibration with your air, right? Because it'll be vibration dominant. So then that's going to dictate it's going to bring concern in terms of what type of horn you have, because it's about the compatibility of this combination with this combination, which is your saxophone. So one of the things that I can tell you, I have an old Mark VI tenor, and I'm not exactly sure of the date. I think it's like a 1959, maybe a we'll be safe and say 1963. It's 1963. I'll just say that. And one of the things that I noticed about this saxophone, which is different than my other Mark VI tenor, which is a 1972, I do know that number, is that the bell is further to the right. And so when I got this, I thought this horn was defective when I first got it. But one of the things that I realized later after doing some research on the internet, I put in big band saxophones images. And I looked up and they showed saxophonists playing, understanding there were no microphones back in those days. So it was all about the sound of your instrument. And they showed the saxophonists playing to the side like this. And if I stand in front of this mic, you'll notice that my bell points directly to the mic. Whereas if I were to play like I would normally play, it puts my bell, like if I would play like more modern tenor players play, it puts my bell a little bit over to the left. So one of the things that you want to be concerned with, or just understand, is that the big band horns are designed a bit differently, and they're designed for projection because there weren't microphones at that time in front of any of the horns. So whereas the band instruments, they project, but they're different. The technology changed, styles of music changed, and it wasn't necessary to have the same type of projection that was required for big band. So let's talk about core sound. Core sound is probably the most important element to having what I would call a round and rich presence to your sound. Now the question is, how do we work on that? First, let's try to envision it. So when I talk about core sound, if I could create a picture that could explain what core sound is, I would probably use something like a dartboard, right? The idea of a dartboard. We've all played darts before, and you notice that there's a bullseye in the center, right? And then we have all of these rings outside of that bullseye. So let's say that the bullseye is the core, right? That's the depth of your sound. And all of the rings are just the opportunity for color. And the opportunity for color really is going to be dependent upon how much depth you have in your core sound. And so the best way I can describe core sound to you is if you think of maybe an opera singer, right? I play tenor, so I like to use tenors, operatic tenors as an example, like Placido Domingo or Luciano Pavarotti, who I hope you know. If not, please go check him out on the net. He's arguably the greatest operatic tenor of his time. If you ever seen an opera singer play, it's always a noble position that they have. It's always, they stand tall and they speak like this when they sing with their throat open. You can hear I'm changing my voice to project you heard the difference in projection. I'm speaking now, but now when I open my voice, I'm projecting differently, right? It makes me, because a lot of, I'm focusing on the vibration here and opening my throat so that you can get a deeper or more core to my sound. That's what we're trying to do with the saxophone. And there are ways to work on that. It's not necessarily buying equipment. That has something to do with it, but there are ways to work on that, and we're going to talk about that. Air. Airflow is important to make this happen. I've had an opportunity to hang out with a lot of trumpet players, really great trumpet players, and perform next to them. And so I hear a lot of trumpet talk, which I try to apply to the saxophone. So I've played with people like Nicholas Payton and Terrell Stafford and the great and legendary Eddie Henderson, and they all have these rich sounds with strong chords, with lots of color in their sound, and there's a lot of clarity. So I've heard them talk about trumpet sound and airflow, and I think it's applicable. Matter of fact, I'm certain it's applicable to the saxophone. The way to think about this is, I don't know how many of you have heard of a Gatling gun, but a Gatling gun, if you looked at old war movies, there's this gun and there's usually a guy behind it, and there's this ammunition that's coming out of the side of the gun that's going down to the ground. And the guy behind the gun is spinning this thing, it's like, and you just have bullets coming out of the gun. Well, that's how I like to think about my air. My air is ammo that is on the floor, and I have to figure out a way to bring this air into my lungs so that it goes out of the horn properly, right? So, generally speaking, our professors or teachers tell us to breathe from the diaphragm. But after hanging out with Terrell Stafford, who at one point in our early lives went to a wind specialist in Baltimore, he made it clear to me that you don't breathe from the diaphragm, because the diaphragm is a muscle that pushes air through your lungs. So what do you do then? You just think about breathing deeply. So you don't breathe surface. You can't breathe like that. You have to breathe. So what do? You take the ammunition, you bring it up here and lock it, and then you execute, right? Breathe, execute. Right? So that's how to think about getting that sort of support from the diaphragm, which is really what they're talking about. Bringing the air up, locking it in, and then pushing from there. That's how you get that support for your sound, right? That helps with your core sound. Of course, the common thing that all of us instrumentalists do is long tones, right? Where we hold a tone, whether it be crescendo into a tone, or crescendo and decrescendo into a tone, or just decrescendo into a tone, or just keep the tone even. We do that, and that helps us strengthen these muscles right here in our embouchure, right? We work on not allowing our tone to waver, and work on practicing balancing vibration and air. Sometimes in certain situations you want more air to be in your tone so that it's more breathy. Sometimes you want it more resonant, where it's more vibrant, right? So I'm going to show you an exercise that I suggest you do somewhere in private and not around your parents, because they might get a little annoyed. But it really works well to your embouchure, where you just take your mouthpiece, you start here, right? You put your reed. I like to take my reed, I put it on the table of the mouthpiece, and just move it a little bit over the tip, slightly over the tip, so I have a little bit more resistance. And then tighten my ligature back, so it's just over the tip, just a little bit. I know you probably can't see it, but it is over the tip a little bit. And I'll blow into it to see. Let's try that again. And what you do is you practice making a siren sound, where you'll play fast and try to make your waver fast, and then you'll do it again, and you'll try to make it slow. So we'll do fast first. Right? That's good for the muscles in here. Just do it, say, okay, I'm gonna do it for a minute before I put it on my neck. You will feel tension here, but your muscles will get stronger. And then you can do it slower. So you do this, and after you do this for a while, then you say, okay, I'm now going to try to play a scale, a major scale on my mouthpiece. So what you need to do when you do this waver is you need to focus on the highest pitch and the lowest pitch you can possibly make on the mouthpiece, which is more difficult than the high pitch. And then you start from there and try to play a scale. Try it a little lower. Now, that's not easy. That's something that you have to work at. And it's like anything else. You don't use it, you'll lose it. But this practice really helps to strengthen your embouchure. Then you can put the mouthpiece back on the neck of your horn. So I have some other resistance techniques that I'll share with you that I use. I didn't bring anything with me. But normally when I practice with a hand towel, that you see in your washroom. And I'll roll it up in a tube and I put it in my belt. I already understand that it stops me from being able to play my low B flat. But what it does is it creates a certain amount of resistance and it positions you to open your throat because your horn sounds stuffy. But the more you open your throat, the more clarity comes out of the horn. It starts to become more and more clear. And then when you take out the towel, it's like butter. It's just ah. As well, I'll take a bandana and I will fold it so that it's a thin strip and long and tie it around my octave key. And what I do is I'll practice that way all day. And what that does is that positions all upper register playing in the horn to be done here. So again, when you take that off and you take that towel out, what happens is playing the horn becomes even easier. And the easier it is to play the horn, the less you have to focus on playing the horn, and you can focus on creating melodic ideas when you're trying to improvise. Alrighty, so that's about it. I thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed yourself as much as I enjoyed sharing this information with you. Again, my name is Tim Warfield, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the All City Jazz Festival. Take care.
Thank you.